to Judas House Ministries, an online ministry for special needs and medically fragile families. Now let's get into the word of the week. I liken the life of a special needs parent to that of a soldier who is actively at war. I have never been a soldier at war, but my father was, and he described to me what that was like. My father was a Vietnam veteran, and he had to go to war, a war where only 1 in 50 soldiers survived. Only 1 in 50 made it back home alive. And during that, they would have to go out into the jungles of Vietnam and not knowing where an enemy would rear its head. And depending on what was coming at them, whether they were being shot at or pursued or needed to be on the offense, depending what was coming at them, that determined how they had to move in that moment. Whether they were going to have to return fire, whether they were going to go and run the enemy down, if they were at the advantage, whether they were going to have to get under dead bodies and hide while snakes crawled over them without moving, because if they did, then they would be killed. They had to determine what they were going to do. Were they just going to let the camouflage help them blend in and hide? Or were they going to go on the offense? But think of the mentality that you have to have when any moment in time, every moment in time, you're cognizant of the fact that an enemy is after you actively and wants to take your life. They're not just after you, but they are seeking to kill you. And knowing that, the type of stress and pressure that you will be under, just knowing that, that is what they lived. And as special needs parents, a lot of times, that's how we live in. We're under constant anxiety and pressure. Sometimes it's coming from our children, just trying to care for them. The fact that there are some special needs children who are violent and do attack their parents or do attack others. And that's something that you have to manage. Sometimes they may be like my son and have Tourette's syndrome, where they are making noises kind of constantly, that even if you get used to it, the public will not get used to it. And just by walking into a public place, you've got to then manage all of the stares and the comments and the whatever it is. Or just the anxiety of going to the school and you know you're going to face a table with 10 other people at the table who are coming there to hopefully help your child. But if you got 10 at the table, chances are at least one of them folks is going to be in opposition to what you're trying to accomplish educationally for your child. You got anxiety. You got pressure, you got stress weighing down on you every hour of the day. For some of you, your children don't sleep at night and they are up all night. And because of elopement and other things that you have to consider, you also are not getting any rest. It's not an easy life. And so, considering all those things, this life can be very difficult because just like soldiers, special needs parents come in different forms, ability levels, skill sets, and areas. My father would describe that going to Vietnam, he was a country boy. You know, my dad grew up in the country of Georgia, in the woods, where they would have to go and hunt for what they wanted to eat. And, you know, they were used to walking through the trees, wooded areas, used to seeing snakes, used to, coming upon animals of different types. And although an animal and a human are two different things, he at least went into it with the skill of hunting. He went into it with the acclamation of being in a wooded space, growing up there and having to face different types of, animals in the wild. So at least he had that at his advantage. So when he went out there, he had an advantage over those men who had not experienced that. And he would state that a lot of them didn't fare as well. A lot of them dealt with a lot of mental health issues and just weren't able to cope with being in the jungles of Vietnam, because even though Vietnam, the jungles there may be similar to the woods where he grew up, he still had to adjust, because Vietnam is a boggy place. And so their feet would be wet pretty much all the time, suffering from different bacteria and things that were in the water. These were things that they all had to face and adjust to, in addition to the enemy that they were facing. And so just like there were different types of soldiers and people who had different skill sets, and that made them a little bit more capable of adjusting a little more quickly, then there are parents who have different skill sets. Some of you, like me, grew up with your own disability, grew up knowing what it felt like or feels like to have been outcasted, a little bit outside of the norm, a little bit unaccepted. And so when you faced it with your own child, you were a little bit better equipped for that than some of our counterparts who may not have experienced being an outcast as a child, who may not have had any type of disability growing up. Some of you, like me, may have an education background. I was a special education teacher before I ever had my son. So I at least knew where to go to find some of the resources that my son would need. I knew that he would need an early intervention. I had some knowledge and information, and I had a little insight on that thing. And then, of course, finally, the most important thing is that I had an end with God. I knew who my father was, and I had built a relationship with him before I had my son. So when I got the diagnosis, I knew where to go. I knew that God would be able to support me with whatever it is that I would face. And just knowing all these things still did not make me immune to the suffering. I still had sleepless nights, both from my son not sleeping and from me being up worrying about what would become of him. I still had tears to cry. I still had battles to fight out there in the community and in his school. I had teachers who were not knowledgeable, teachers who were not concerned about what was going to happen with my son. And I'm not saying that they all were that way. My son had some really amazing teachers along the way, but he had a few sprinkled in there that wasn't so good either. And that posed a challenge to me. And so, this life is not an easy one. But we can seek the Father so that we can get the weapons of our warfare that we know that are not carnal, but mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. We can seek those things. And God, who is there ever ready to equip us with what we need in order to be successful in this life, he will not turn his back on us. The word says that he would never leave us nor forsake us, even unto the end. And so we know that when we go to him, we don't have a high priest who is unable to understand what we're going through. We have one who is standing at the right hand of the Father right now, petitioning the throne of mercy and grace on our behalf. He's speaking to the Father for us. And y'all, there's no better person to speak to the Father for us than his Son. Because who you going to listen to more than your Son? We got an in, y'all. I-N. And God has already prepared a determined end, E-N-D, for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So, I just want to encourage you tonight. God will never leave us. He's not going to forsake us. He's not going to turn his back on us. And he is there ready to equip us with everything that we need to be successful, raising these little people, loving on those in the community who are in a tough spot, supporting one another, and grieving with those who have lost their child. It's not easy, y'all. It's not going to be. I wish I could tell you that it was going to be. It won't. But the victories that we have are so much sweeter than anything. I feel like nobody can celebrate the way that we do, y'all, because we have worked harder than anybody else out there. So when our kids have victories, hey, we're going to do it up. So I pray you're encouraged today. I pray you have love in your heart and in your home. I pray that God gives you some rest and peace and joy and hope. I love you. I hope this word resonated with you and that it, along with God's Spirit, carries you through the rest of your week. It's not easy being us, y'all, but God has equipped us with everything we need for success. I hope you will subscribe to our channel and connect with us online at the website shared below. And I'll see you next week on Judah's House. Praise is the answer to what you go through. Always remember that God is with you. Here at Judah's house. Here at Judah's house. Here at Judah's house. Here at Judah's house. Here at Judah's house.